Welcome to the Vintage Athlete Podcast, specially designed for retired athletes. I'm your host, Tara Fortier. I'm a master's level licensed and board certified behavior analyst, yoga and meditation teacher, nutrition coach, and now mom of 2 athletes. But most importantly, I'm just like you, a retired athlete doing life after sports. Whether it's trying new things that you might be bad at, learning how to feed and exercise your post-sport body without kicking your own butt, or figuring out how to fill that giant hole in your life that used to be filled with practices, coaches, teammates, and the adrenaline rush of your sport, I'm going to drop some unconventional knowledge and strategies on you and do it from a place of love and acceptance. We'll tackle solutions from a unique perspective rooted in mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy. If you're a retired athlete looking to create a fulfilling and empowered life beyond your sport, this show is for you. This is the Vintage Athlete Podcast, your game plan for life after sports. So lace up for your next adventure and we'll transition, redefine, and evolve together. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Vintage Athlete Podcast. In this week's episode, I wanted to talk about some takeaways that I have from a 50-hour in-person yoga teacher training that I did. I'm now 2 weeks post attending this training, and it was the very first 50-hour inside flow teacher training on U.S. soil. I was hoping to record this sooner, but life happens. And before I could record this, I needed to bring my daughter to an out-of-state gymnastics camp. Often as a parent, especially one of a competitive athlete, you need to put your own plans on hold so that your kids can experience theirs. So former athletes out there whose parents drove all over town, all over the state, or went all over the country to make sure that you attended your games, camps, tournaments, or whatever it was that you needed to go to, take a moment to thank them, because I'm sure there's something else they needed or wanted to do, and they put it aside for you. They made this sacrifice happily, and we're grateful for the opportunity to spend time with you and to see you succeed. But it can be a lot sometimes. And so I found myself having to put recording this podcast on hold because I needed to be present for my daughter. And so it's a little bit after when I wanted to record it, but here I am. So on to business. This 50-hour in-person training, it was an amazing experience. It was full of growth, connection, and perspective taking. And there was something about going into another little world for a week with over 100 people from all over the world, many of which I didn't even know, that we were all there to learn and grow. And there's something about that experience that changes you in a meaningful way. It felt like I went into this little bubble where we learned, we laughed, we cried, we created, we taught each other, and we grew. And by the end of the week, when I crawled out of this little bubble and I rubbed my eyes and I took a big stretch, I emerged from my nice little cocoon with a new perspective and some really nice life lessons that I thought were particularly appropriate to share with former and retired athletes. So, for this episode, I want to share some of that with you, hoping that you can learn and benefit from it too. So, I think it would first be helpful if I explained what Inside Flow is and why I love it and why I teach it. So I discovered Inside Flow probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago. The studio where I teach yoga had a workshop. And so this yoga teacher came in and taught this, I think it was like a 90-minute class of Inside Flow. And I had never heard of it. I had never taken it. I didn't know what it was. But the studio owner had said to me as I was leaving, I had taught a class right before that. And he said, you should really stay. I think you would really like this. It would really help kind of give you some ideas for sequencing your own classes. And I didn't have anything specific to do afterwards. So I was like, yeah, all right, I'll stay. And it was amazing. It was this beautiful, beautiful practice. And I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to do some more. And so it was just a one-time workshop, and that made me a little sad. But maybe about 6 months later, the opportunity came up to attend a 20-hour teacher training to learn how to teach it. Um, not far from where I live, maybe about 2 hours away. I jumped on that. I took that training, and I've been teaching this type of yoga for about a year. But there was this opportunity to go to this 50-hour training, and the 50-hour training was in the same location as the first one, but it was being led by Young Ho Kim, who is the founder and the inventor of Inside Flow. And I really just couldn't pass on this opportunity. So I went. And so what Inside Flow is it's kind of an evolved vinyasa yoga practice where you move to the beat of the music and you learn flow or a sequence of poses that's choreographed to a specific song. And you learn the sequence in the first half of the class to different music. So you don't do it to the song it was choreographed to, but you do it to similar types of music, similar beats per minute. And once you learn that flow, that sequence, then you do it to the song it was choreographed to. And that's when the magic happens. That's when you really feel the music and you feel how your movement matches it. And the goal by the end of the class for the teacher is that you are able to fade out all your cues or your prompts or telling people what the next pose or move is, so that by the end we all flow together and we all flow as one without any talking. We all just know it. We all move together to this song. And that's my verbal explanation of it. It's hard to really capture how amazing it is with just the description. So I'll definitely talk a little more later about how you can experience Inside Flow for yourself. But I went to this teacher training to learn more, to get better at it. And so, yeah, so one of the things that I took away from the training that Young Ho Kim, the founder, said was like, somebody asked, what's the why? Like, what's the intention of this? And I just loved his answer. He said, it's happiness, creating happiness and fun through movement and music. And so it was really amazing to be able to return to the experience of being a student and fully enjoying the movement because it felt good and it felt right to move in that way to the beat of the music. When you're teaching it, you're very focused on making sure you remember it, making sure your students are doing things in a way that is good for them. And so you don't really get to immerse yourself in the experience as much as when you're a student. So I totally resonated with his explanation of that happiness and that fun through music and movement, because that's what I got to experience that week when we were being taught different flows and different songs. And so it's not like dancing at a party, right? Where you're mainly doing your own thing, right? So the music's on and you're rocking out and you're feeling it. But the difference is Inside Flow is about moving together with others and all connecting in that way. So the connection that you develop with the people around you is the most important part, or the most meaningful part, I think, for me. So let's talk a little bit about what I was able to take away from this. There were so many things, and I really am trying to narrow it down to a short list, um, because I could talk forever and nobody needs to hear all of the things when I think about it. I'm going to boil it down to the most valuable and the most meaningful things that I think are important for you as a former or retired athlete. The first thing I want to talk about with regard to things that I took away from this training that are applicable to retired athletes is the idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I had the opportunity to do just that at this training. Even though I've been teaching it for a year, I there was opportunities to kind of take my teaching a little bit further. So as I mentioned before, Inside Flow is about teaching a choreographed flow to a specific song. So because I've been teaching for a little while, I've had ideas about making up a flow or this series of postures choreographed to a song. And I had this specific song that was really meaningful to me. And so I really wanted to create a flow for it. And I did that. Over the last few months. I created this flow and practiced it and learned it, memorized it. And so there's something in these trainings, it's called Flow Factory. And so what that is people who have choreographed flows, they show it to the teachers and the trainers there, and then they critique it or they improve it. They make changes to it. They kind of rework it if it needs to be reworked, and then it becomes approved. And so when you have a flow approved, it means that you can put it on the resource page for all the other teachers. Other teachers can teach it to their classes. So I had made it a goal for myself to do this at this training, and I submitted the song that I had a flow to, and it got chosen, and it got chosen first out of all of the other people there. It was the first song that was done at Flow Factory. And so what that involves is you get up on the stage all by yourself in front of all the people there, which was over 100, and a lot of people that are amazing, talented, long-term teachers. And so I did it. I got up there, I did my flow, and they had good things to say about it. They had things that needed to be changed, and I went with it because obviously that's why I was there. And so but it was scary. It was stressful because then as they're changing things, they're telling you what to do and what to change, and then you're supposed to do it with them. And I had been practicing this flow my way to my version for a while. So it was really challenging to then take that information and immediately apply it. The whole thing took maybe 10 minutes. And so it was very fast and chaotic and a little nerve-wracking, but by the end it was improved, and it was so much fun to be up there and to push myself out of what I would normally do. So as a result, my flow was the first one approved on US soil. So that was really exciting for me. I get to put that little accomplishment in my profile. But it was such a cool experience. And then what ended up happening was other people came up to me after and they were like, "That was so brave. That was so amazing. I can't believe you did that." And then my response to that was, "Well, that was my goal and that's what I wanted to do. So I did it. And thank you for seeing it as like this brave thing that I did." But it was really just something that I personally wanted to push myself to do. And so while I appreciated all the praise, it was also just like kind of a promise that I had made to myself to get uncomfortable so that I could do this. So it was such a good experience. And had I kind of hemmed and hawed and been like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, and, listen to all those thoughts that kept popping into my brain, and not just recognizing that those were thoughts and those were normal, and I didn't have to listen to them, I probably wouldn't have done it. So get comfortable being uncomfortable, especially when it comes to new things, when it comes to things that maybe you're not that familiar with. Because if you don't, you might be missing out on amazing opportunities and amazing accomplishments and things that outside of your sport you never knew you could do. So, my takeaway from that was be comfortable being uncomfortable, because a lot of the times that you do this, the results are amazing, right? And you get to do something incredible. So, takeaway number one, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So, takeaway number two, that I think is really important, is to recognize that you never know someone else's story or what they've been through. You don't know what you don't know. So, it's important to keep that in mind with your interactions with people. One of the parts of this practice and taking Insight Flow classes is that once you do the flow, the series to the actual song it was choreographed to, then you take a little bit of time in class to reflect on what it means and what you can learn from it as the teacher. And then you also ask your students to do the same. And so us learning these different flows and these different sequences when we were there was that the person that was teaching it to us did that. We call it storytelling. And so there were many, many people, because we did group flows with the other trainees, that did storytelling and talked about how they related to these different songs and the emotions that they had. And some of the stories that people told were, they were surprising, they were shocking, they were heartwarming, but they weren't things I would have ever known or ever assumed about somebody. So it was really important to recognize that somebody that you think has it all together and that is doing these amazing things, they probably have a struggle behind all of that they're dealing with. And so it was an opportunity to really be mindful of that and recognize that, so that we're open-minded, right? And we're welcoming of everybody and what they're going through. So that became really obvious to me, the more stories that I listened to from other Inside Flow teachers. So as far as former athletes go, I think that that's really important to keep in mind, that we need to recognize that not everybody has had the same experience as us. As athletes, we've had a very unique experience, and people may not always understand that, or they may not have had that experience. Maybe their teenage years or their, young adult years where you were hardcore in your sport, they had a very different experience, and they're going to approach the world in a very different way. It doesn't mean that you can't connect with those people and that you can't have a meaningful interaction with them. So just keep that in mind. And even among other athletes, not every athlete's story is different. Everyone's been through something different. Every sport is different. Every coach is different. So just take away the idea that you don't know what somebody's been through, right? And you only get to see the surface level of what they choose to show you when they're around you. One of the other things that was really pretty amazing and interesting was that everybody was in this boat together, right? We were all there. There was over 100 of us. Some people had been teaching and had already done some training. Other people had never done anything with Inside Flow in their entire lives. So we were all coming from very different places. That resulted in people having different levels of comfort with things, different levels of confidence, different levels of knowledge. And what became really apparent was that it was so important to have even just these little small interactions and make these small efforts for the other people around you, because that could really have a profound impact on a person. One of the things you have to do at the end of the training is stand up and teach a flow that we had learned during the week. You have to say all the cues. You have to tell everybody what poses to go into and when to do that. And so for some people, they were freaking out all week long. Everyone was told in the beginning of the week this was what was happening. And I had done this before, so I knew that was happening. But some people were super nervous and super freaked out by the idea of standing up on a stage with a microphone and guiding 110 people, understandably so. And so one of the teachers that had been there who had already been teaching, she was talking to another person who this was kind of new to them. And so the person who was really nervous about this process, her name was Rhonda. And so kind of in a joking way, this other teacher had said, "Oh, Rhonda Wild." And so one of the poses, or one of the moves in Inside Flow, is called Ronde, like the dance name, Ronde Wild. And wild stands for wild thing. And so it's a specific movement. And so this one teacher had said to her, "Oh, Rhonda Wild." And, it's funny, and they both laughed. And so later on, she came back up to that teacher and said, "I love that you said my name like that, because it just made me laugh, and it made me so much more relaxed. And I never forgot that part of the sequence, because the pose in the sequence was Ronde Wild." And so for her, that gave her the confidence to remember that part of it and then keep going. And it was such a small action. It was such a small thing that was just really meant as like fun and funny and good natured. And it ended up having such a positive impact on this person. So anything that you do, anything that you say can really have a huge effect on somebody. And so to be mindful of that and take those moments to make that effort is so important. I think that's something that we can all take away from this and apply to our life, either regarding post sport life or just life in general. So yeah, you never know what your efforts and your interactions are going to do for another person. One of the other things that stuck out was that when people need support, we need to lift them up. And this all ties together because we never know what their story is. And so there was this one woman who just really had an effect on so many of us there. And we had this really just beautiful moment during the training where so she had told her story during a flow that we had done, like we all got broken up into groups. And so her group did this flow and she was the person that was chosen to do storytelling. And so in a nutshell, her story was that she had lived kind of in this isolated little charming town where everything was lovely and she had been married for a very long time, had little exposure to a lot of other things. She just kind of lived in this nice little bubble, we'll call it. And so she started to have some trouble in her marriage and then her mother got sick and so she had to kind of leave that little place that she had been for so long to help take care of her mother. And her husband was very unsupportive of that, gave her a really hard time about it. And so, that was kind of the beginning of the end of their marriage. Their marriage ended up falling apart and they got divorced. And now she's kind of all on her own and she's just been living in this little bubble for all this time. And so for her to come to this training by herself with a bunch of other women that she didn't know and learn something new, huge for her. Talk about being uncomfortable. And she told us this story and we were all just like, wow, we had no idea. Like she seemed kind of shy and reserved and we had no idea that that's where that was coming from. So fast forward to the end of the training where we're all doing our exam where we have to take the microphone and teach a sequence. And she is petrified. Like you can just see it on her face. She is white as a ghost. She's so scared to do this. She actually came in with one of the other trainers who had taken her aside and worked with her one-on-one and tried to give her some pointers and build up her confidence, and which was amazing in of itself. So it was her turn to go. She walked in holding hands with this trainer. And she walked her up on stage and she took the microphone and she was just so nervous still. And so, but we were like, come on, you can do it. And we all started cheering for her. And then the music started and she started cueing and she made a couple mistakes in the beginning. And so when that happens, they just stop the music and you just start over again. And so that happened and she was still struggling. And so what ended up happening was because we knew the flows so well, we had been doing them all week, people started just like shouting out the cues for her. And then she would say them in the microphone and then eventually the whole room was doing it. And all of us were just like, you got this, you can do this, you are here for this reason. You took that leap and we are 100% here to support you. And so by the end, the whole room was helping her get through this song. And it was really just like this beautiful moment to make somebody feel worthy and feel confident and feel supported. Somebody we barely knew, but that's what she needed in that moment. And so I think we've all, as athletes, had the experience where we need extra support, right? Or we need somebody to pump us up, or we need somebody to be like, it's okay, I got you. it's important to be that for other people too. I think we get so caught up in our own stuff and our own drama. And in sports, it's all about competition, right? And being the best. And this just wasn't the time for that. Really, you were supposed to go through the song and do it all on your own and have your timing perfect. And she ended up passing her exam, even though it didn't necessarily meet the criteria. That's what that woman needed in her life. When she went up on the stage and did her group flow with everybody else, you could just see it on her face. She was just smiling. And then when she's out in the microphone, she looked out and she was like, "You all just look so beautiful. I can't believe I'm here." Like it was heartwarming. And it was so amazing to create that for another person. And so I think that's something that we can all be mindful of. We can all kind of bring that to our awareness that when people need lifting up, do that for them. It's not always about what we need and what, our own struggles and what's going to benefit us. That's what she needed in that moment. And that's what we did. So, yeah, that one just really resonated with me. I just took that one with me and like put it in my heart and kept it there. So, that's one of my other warm and fuzzy stories from this training. The other thing that I think is really important to recognize for former and retired athletes is to start finding movement for your body that feels good, that you enjoy. There's something about this practice that it feels good to move with the beat, to just do a movement that reflects the lyric of the song or the emotion or the meaning of the song. It was just like moving because it feels good is just good medicine for your body and your mind. And going there, I was like, wow, how am I going to do this? It was a week long. Like this was all day for 7 days. And I'm clearly not as young as I used to be, especially not as an athlete. And I've got all sorts of residual aches and pains in my head. I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? Like, I'm going to be hurting by the end of the week. And then I stopped and recognized that those are thoughts, right? Those are those things that I'm telling myself that are taking away from this amazing experience that I got to have. And so the movement and the practice felt amazing. It wasn't easy. None of it is easy. It's not an easy practice. You do one class and you are sweating. You are like working every muscle in your body, but it feels joyful. And so to be able to do something, practice in a way that I can find joy in movement rather than doing it for an outside purpose of like staying fit or because my Apple Watch told me I got to get up and move or whatever it is. There's some other outcome that I'm going for. It was so freeing. It really was. We all need to find something like that in our lives, especially as athletes, because our movement and our training and our fitness and all the things that we do are always for a specific purpose. And so we always had an outcome in mind. Even now, as we're older, it's like, well, I want to stay fit and I want to stay strong and I want to maintain my weight and I want to do all these things. And that's why I go to the gym or I do all these workouts that I may or may not like and that I may or may not enjoy, doing it for a reason. And when I found Inside Flow, it was like a light bulb went off for me that I do this because it feels amazing. And both in my body and in my heart, like there's just this emotion that you get to experience when you take these classes and you get to connect with other people. Like I said before, one of the goals is to move as one, right? Everybody to just move together without having somebody tell them what to do. And when you do that, you're connected to everybody around you. And it's just such a joyful experience. And don't get me wrong, some of the songs can be emotional, they can be heavy. There was definitely crying. There was one song that really just hit everybody. Like we did it 3 more times after we did storytelling and everybody was crying while they were flowing, including myself. The video I have of it is like, I'm not showing that one to anybody, but it's just that was how everybody in the room felt and how everybody in the room connected to the song and to each other. And so that really was one of the best things about the experience was the connections with other people and the ability for me to just kind of go and fully be present for this whole week. I checked in with my family a couple times, but I didn't check my email. I think I maybe posted on social media once the whole time I was there. I waited till after because I didn't want to go back to my room at the end of the day and 20 minutes trying to make a reel of stuff I did earlier that day that I recorded. I wanted to go interact with the people that I had spent time with all day and have dinner with them or sit in the jacuzzi with them and talk some more. And it was really easy to be present and mindful in those moments. And when we can be present and mindful for experiences throughout our days, throughout our weeks, throughout our life, we get so much more out of that, right? And it's just so much more of a rewarding experience. So those are my takeaways from Inside Flow. If you would like to learn more about it or you're interested in taking a class, please connect with me on Instagram because now I have connections to Inside Flow teachers all over the country and all over the world. So there's, it's growing in popularity here in the US. And so if you're interested in bringing that into your life and seeing what it's all about, I would love, love, love to connect you with that. So please follow me on Instagram. If you want to kind of see what it looks like, I definitely have some videos up there. I'm going to be posting more now that I'm not at gymnastics camp with my daughter. So yeah, definitely check that out. The last thing I want to just say is that I need a fitness guide for retired athletes. And it really does kind of focus on finding movement and finding a level of intensity that is self-compassionate and that feels good in your body. And it's not about beating yourself up anymore physically or mentally, and that you can stay fit and you can maintain your fitness without training like a competitive athlete anymore because your body doesn't need to do that. And so if this sounds like something that you need some guidance on, please go to my website and download the Retired Athletes Fitness Guide. I will link that in the notes here as well. That can definitely kind of help you frame some of this and develop something or seek out some movement and some practices for yourself that bring you joy, right? Because why are we beating ourselves up all the time? We don't do that anymore. So anyway, those are my takeaways from my 50-hour in-person Inside Flow teacher training. It was an amazing experience. Again, if you want to know more, please come talk to me, DM me. I will happily engage in conversation with you about it. And in the meantime, I hope you can take some of this and apply it to your life. And yeah, until then, until the next episode, I hope you keep evolving. Thanks, everyone. You have officially crossed the finish line of this episode of the Vintage Athlete Podcast. Congrats. I hope you're feeling empowered to live your best life after sports. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback not only helps improve this podcast, but also helps other retired athletes find our community. Stay connected with me on Instagram at vintage.athlete for daily tips, inspiring stories, and to share your own experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for being a part of the Vintage Athlete team. Together, let's continue to find balance, build fitness, and redefine success in this exciting new chapter. I'm Tara Fortier, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time. Until then, keep evolving and keep creating your legacy beyond the game. Take care, and see you next time on the Vintage Athlete Podcast.